Welcome to episode 48 of Lost in Translation with Bobby Martin. We are coming to you from the WCTV studios in Wilmington, Massachusetts again. Bobby, how you doing?
Sam, I'm doing great. Great to be back in studio and looking forward to a great podcast.
On a roll, man. You ready for winter to be over?
You know what? We're from the Northeast, man. We're tough. We can tough it out. We're all right. We can handle the winter. Embrace the winter.
So we are joined today by Bryant University Associate Head Coach Chris Cole. Chris has had a really fascinating journey in hoops. Player, career kind of cut short, got into the training, coaching round, and then just climbed the ranks, and he is an associate head coach, which is pretty remarkable for a guy in the coaching world. This is a young guy. How old are you?
39.
Not even 40, associate head coach. And for Bryant University, which has established itself as the team to beat in the America East Conference this year. Chris, thanks for coming today.
Appreciate you guys for having me, for sure.
I like asking this question of everyone because you get different answers. But for you, what does the game of basketball mean to you in your life at this point? Just what would you say about the game of basketball in your life?
Man, the first word that pops up is structure, honestly. So my father introduced the game to me at 4 years old, and I was around it. And I would say not everything, but the majority of what I learned, as a man growing up, and, some of the characteristics that it takes to be successful and just a, good citizen came from the game of basketball. So yeah, it's enjoyable. I love it. Like everybody knows, this game is addicting. I love it. But I would say some of the principles that I've learned, not some of them, the majority of the principles that I've learned to help me become the man that I am and the mentor that I am, came from the game of basketball. So I would say structure.
Could you name some of those characteristics? When you say structure, I automatically think of John Wooden's pyramid for success.
Yeah.
What was it for you that gave you so much structure? Because, my son had actually said that that's what he enjoyed about the game too. He graduated from Rice back in 2020, okay. But he was talking about structure. So I'm just interested to know what you think.
Yeah, I would say discipline. Hardworking, and then most of all, perseverance. I've learned all those things through the game. My father was a drill sergeant, so structure comes to mind, obviously, with that. He was a drill sergeant, so he installed in me, the hard working aspect and the discipline and all that. And then when he passed away when I was 13, I had to, fend for myself, and that's where perseverance comes in, because I took a different road, obviously, that structure wasn't there. So,
right.
As a young kid at 13, that structure is not there. Let me try something new that I haven't been doing. And when you have to persevere, you go through some things and have to persevere. I think those are the three things that I've kind of learned from the game, probably. Hard work and discipline and perseverance.
Mm-hmm.
Man, we've had a lot of people on our shows that have gone, everybody goes through stuff, but,
right.
we've talked a lot about sort of life and loss and different things.
Right.
I was an older teen when I lost my dad, and he was, instrumental in my life.
Yeah.
He was the most important person in the world to me growing up.
Same here.
I nothing prepares you for it, but I can't imagine if I was 13 and I lost him. What impact did that have on you? How did you deal with that?
At 13, I'll be honest with you, I didn't deal with it well. And you don't know you're not dealing with it well at the time. I went through some different things, and that's why I encourage people, some of our guys and just guys that I mentor, to go talk to people, because at 13, you don't know to talk to people, so you harbor some of that stuff in. So I had some anger issues, and I wasn't belligerent anger, which is probably worse when you keep it in. Yep. I was probably a quiet, angry kid. So I ended up, veering from some of the structure and some of the people that were in my life that could have provided some help. And I made some mistakes as a young man, and then I ended up, finding my way back. But when you lose somebody, he was not just, my father was obviously my best friend. I don't think I went one day from the age of 4 to 13. I don't think I went one day without him.
Yeah.
So he was obviously, you know, incremental in my life, but he also was like the before and after care coordinator. He was the guy I grew up in Germany. So he was the guy that ran the facilities there. He was like a big person in the community. When he passed, they sold out the whole gym for his, you know, memorial. And then not just that, my godparents, he was instrumental in almost everybody's life. He's one of those guys that you talk about, you know. So when you lose something that big at 13, you're not equipped to understand where to fill that void.
Yeah.
You know, so you go and look and trying to fill that void. And then on top of you trying to fill that void, I had a mother and a little sister. And what do you say to your kids when you leave the house? Be the man of the house, right?
Mm-hmm.
So in my head, be the man of the house. I'm trying to figure out how to handle my situation, but also be the man of the house.
Yeah.
And all of that at 13, 14 years old, it's really hard to deal with. So, it was very much a turning point in my life, but God sets up things for a reason. I learned that at a young age, man, because he set up a lot of things for me, before he passed. And then all that stuff that you go through, man, it's a stepping stone to whatever your next adversity is. And then you pass that level and then your next adversity. So, I know that was kind of long.
It was perfect.
He was definitely a big part of my life.
So in your dealings with you trained a long time, right?
Yes.
Okay. So you had
my background.
Okay. So your background's in training the kids. How did, at what point, or how did you, I would say, mold what you learned when you were younger, when you were dealing with the younger kids that you had when you were training? I mean, did you see those same qualities? How did you, deal with those kids?
Absolutely. So, I'm kind of backtracking. When my father passed, he had set me up to go to Montrose Christian, where Stu Vetter was one of the biggest coaches ever. Well, he had an assistant under him named David Atkins. David Atkins ends up going to DeMatha, ends up being the Maryland girls coach, and then ends up being this personal skill development guy for the Wizards. Okay. And then he worked for the Clippers. He's one of the biggest names in training back home. So I watched him, along with my father teaching me, just training me. I watched him go through it and how he did it and everything. And at the time that I was going through some of my personal battles, David Atkins was not only training me at Montrose and coaching me as the JV coach when I was in 7th, 8th grade. He was also bringing me home to his wife, putting food in front of me, talking to me when everybody else was through with me, right. Those type of things. So for me, training has a lot to do with relationships. Like, there's a ton of people that know basketball, but that kid is not going to get as much out of it if he's not connected with you emotionally. If you can't connect with that kid on another level for him to be able to take what you're teaching him, it's not going to be as successful as somebody who's just coming in doing drills.
You just mentioned two great words. You said, that there's communication and there's connection.
Yeah.
You need both.
Right.
That's awesome.
So you were in Germany. Your dad was in the military. What branch was he in?
Army. So him and my mother were in the Army, and he was a first sergeant.
So when you came back to go to Montrose Christian, was the rest of your family still abroad? Your mom was in the service.
So it's so. I mean, it's not weird. It's God how it worked out. So we were in Germany at the time, and my godparents, who I've known since I was 4, moved to Maryland. Virginia, Maryland, the DMV area.
Yeah, the DMV, yeah.
And it wasn't even planned like this, but when my father got sick, it was out of nowhere. Obviously, us macho man, he was sick, but never went to the hospital. I remember it to this day. We had a long hallway in my house, and I've never seen my father cry. I've never seen him scream. I've never seen any pain. And all of a sudden, I just hear a big cry out and scream. And my mother rushed in there and then, put me to the side. So I never actually saw my father in that state. But it was so bad that they flew him on a helicopter to Walter Reed. So from that day, I didn't see my father for a couple of months. I went to Maryland to go to some to see him and do some summer basketball, and we ended up staying because whole time he was sick, he was still traveling to different games and going. I was really good because I used to come over to the States anyway as a kid during the summer, so people knew about me. So he was planning all this out, before he knew what was happening at the time. So he was going to DeMatha, he was going to O'Connell, he was going to all these schools and seeing what the best fit for me was.
Right.
And at the time, he thought Kevin Sutton, who's been everywhere, he thought Kevin Sutton was probably the perfect coach for me. So he set up that avenue for me.
So how would you describe yourself as a player? I mean, the DMV, the hoop scene down there is incredible.
Yeah,
it's one of the best sort of hotbeds. You think of like Philly, you think of DM, like
it's a culture thing down there. Yeah.
And how would you, guards especially they come out of the DMV.
Yeah.
How would you describe yourself as a player? And maybe I should backtrack before you even say that. At what point did you know, hey, I'm pretty good, I could maybe go get my college paid for to go play? And how would you describe yourself as a player?
Well, my road was a little different. I was really good at 11, 12, 13, like super good. So, not talking arrogantly, but at that time, I felt like that was a foregone conclusion. I was trying to go higher.
Yeah.
Before my father passed, and when my father passed, a lot of stuff derailed it. So, and then once I got back into basketball, I was around everything. I was around was Division I. So I felt I was good enough because I was around that. I don't even know if I was good enough at the time, but when you're around everybody around you as Division I, and then you're around the Curtis Malones and the Trevor Browns and everything, when you're in that culture, you just think that's who you are. So playing with the guys that I played with and against the guys that I played with, if you're successful, you just think you belong. So that, I would say, almost all the way out, man.
And how would you describe yourself as a player? 'Cause you're a point guard.
Yeah, just a natural point guard, a natural leader. My father instilled that in me when I was a young age. Very smart. I knew everything on the floor. Very good with people. Like, I know I'm not talking about skill stuff right now, but I was very good with people. So I could help. Like, I could trick a teammate into doing whatever I needed him to do, or even, defensively, I had slow feet, but I was always in position. Like, I always knew where to be in help or this, that, and the third. So when I was younger, I was just really, really good. I was just better than everybody. But as I got older, I wasn't. And I was a leader. I would get everybody the ball. People loved playing with me.
That's so important, though. You're like, this isn't really skill. But like so many kids, I think don't get that it's more than just being physically talented on your own. I think we live sort of in an era where kids are so used to the good ones. Bobby, correct me if I'm wrong, but doing so much sort of solo now because it's like, go with your trainer, you're jumping from one AAU team to another, transferring schools maybe in high school because you're good at the publics, then you go to a private, then you go to a private. Like, there is, to play in college, there is a big team aspect, especially as a point guard,
Yes.
And I think so many people, we have this now sort of basketball culture that we've created that is so sort of like individualized, doing your own thing, doing your and like you're developing skills. People are more skilled now. It's important, but like there is that being able to mesh with other people, being able to lead, that I think can get lost in the shuffle of kids playing for 3 different AAU teams, just going from game to game to game, not transferring school to school.
Well, I mean, so okay, I'm going to push back on that just a little bit, because and I say this with humility. Basketball is first an individual game where, as we're talking about now, you give yourself to a team dynamic, right? You choose to go on that team because you can go out and play anytime you want. But when it comes down to the business of the game, and college is turned into a business, you got professional, if you're not playing well, you're done, right? The rules become malleable at that point when you're not playing well, right? Coaches have jobs. Okay. So what we're trying to do is where's the middle ground where you can teach or where you can help the player start to develop the mindset that, you know what, you've got to be willing to help everybody else get what they need in order for you to get what you want. But then you're also talking about there are levels to this game, right? You may not be good enough for that next level, but you still think you are. So now you've got a coach that has to tell you the truth, right? So now the player is still going through all sorts of internal conflict because they're not where they want to be.
Right.
You know, so it's hard. I think it's more difficult for those players to understand that there are so many interconnected pieces to this. They don't get that type of teaching or that type of challenge.
Yeah. Well, to me, I think when it's the coaches that you're going to, that it's their responsibility.
Okay.
But it's also whoever their handler or mentor or whoever is helping them navigate where they're going to be able to create their game in a way that does both.
Right.
Right. For us, Connor Withers is like our guy. Like, he does everything. He can make shots, but he's not selfish. He gets off of it. He's a great team defender. Like, he does everything. Last year, he was more concerned maybe on his individual stuff. This year, he's just strictly about winning. He's taken so much of a jump mentally. He's strictly about winning, and now his numbers are up. Earl Timberlake is a guy, like, he's got a chance to be player of the year, but his game is cultivated on just winning.
Right.
You know, so we'll look at the numbers, and the numbers are good, but it's because he's just going out there trying to win. He's not chasing numbers.
Right.
So there's a way we talk about connection, right? There's a way you have to talk to those kids and help them understand that they can get what they're looking for individually if their mind isn't just straight on the individual. It's harder to do it that way. It really is. It's harder to go out there. Like, I tell kids, like, Earl's had close to near triple doubles maybe 6 or 7 times, and he doesn't even try.
Right.
Right. But there was an instance this year where he was close and he was trying and didn't even
happen.
Yeah, it didn't happen. You know? So I think it starts from the ground up of how you're raising that kid and raising them in the game to help them. And some of the guys that get it late are those individual guys, because if you start to be in the game late, you're already in the business aspect.
Right.
If that makes sense.
Right. No, it makes total sense.
You know what I'm saying? So if I'm starting to get good late and I'm 16, 17 years old, now I'm already looking at, I got to go to college. I got to try to get paid here. My numbers got to be this. But if your game is cultivated young, then your game is already a certain way. And then you can add the individual aspect to it.
So, Bobby, I agree with you that it's definitely it's an individual, like, you're an individual, but you're learning to be a part of a team. You're choosing to be a part of a team. And I feel like in the era that we're in today, which is it's so different than when you got to college.
Yes.
But it's like the blinds are kind of like you can see behind the curtain now, as far as, like, everyone used to always say, like, oh, it's about a team, but, like, it always was a business in college. It just, there was a facade of it, like everyone being an amateur.
Right.
But coaches routinely, when you and me and Bobby were in school, routinely, they'd make a scholarship offer. They'd decide this kid, there was a better kid out there. They'd run kids off the team, or they wouldn't renew a scholarship. And, like, so now it's just like, all right, we're just kind of seeing where it's at as far as kids can transfer, coaches can not renew, all these different things. And I'm curious in today's day and age, because you guys are at Bryant, you're in a small Division I conference.
Right.
And we're in the era of the transfer portal, and you guys have really kind of embraced that, which I think a lot of low to mid majors really, the ones that are keeping up with the trend, that's what they're doing. They're going, okay, we really are living with the either guys who kill it for 2 to 3 years at a Division II and are now physically mature, move up, or guys who went high level like Earl Timberlake. It didn't quite work out. They dropped down, and you got to find the right ones. But then it's like you have to put into overdrive building a team dynamic of these guys coming from all over the place.
Quickly. And that's why I always say the relationship piece in any business is never going to go away.
Right.
Like, people think just because the kids are getting paid that the relationship piece is not. Well, We have we never get Earl Timberlake if I don't know Earl Timberlake since he was in 7th grade.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? We don't get the Kayvon Kramers. We don't get the Rafael Pinzon. We don't get those guys if you don't. Now, the piece where you got to quickly do is to retain.
Yep.
Right.
Like you have to, if you get a kid that you don't have a relationship with and he's good, then your relationship building needs to be all that throughout that year. But like you said, I think the relationship piece is always in any business, not just this. In any business, relationships are business. You know, there's business. You want to do business with people that you know that you trust. So when guys are going to college, especially for us going into the transfer portal, if you're in the transfer portal, that means you're unhappy. You know what I mean? If you're unhappy, that means you want to go somewhere that you trust. You know, what's the best way to go? Somebody you know. So if you can have that connection with that kid or with that parent or with that handler, it's a little easier. I don't think the relationship piece is ever going to go away. You know,
you mentioned two guys that are both transfers, but Earl Timberlake, Connor Withers, very different career arcs to get there. Earl Timberlake was, I believe, a top 50 recruit coming out of high school. Or
top 35.
Top 35. Yeah, he was big time. Was it Memphis that he went to before?
Well, he went to Miami first and got hurt. And that's a total different story. But he got hurt and then went to Memphis.
And then came to you guys.
Yes, and then came to
And
us.
so that's like real high level guy. Connor Withers was at your guys' now conference rival, UMass Lowell. And you know, we don't need to get it, but like my understanding was essentially told by Lowell, like, hey, you don't have to go home, but like you can't stay here when his normal 4-year arc was up.
Yeah.
And how did you guys decide both of them were the right fit for you? It's so when you have 13 scholarships and every single one of them matters, especially at the small school level. You really got to get it right in building these rosters. And you also kind of know we've got a finite window. If guys are too good, too fast, they're going to leave. If they don't pan out, we're not going to be able to compete. You know, it's how did you decide both of them are a good fit?
Well, some people think like recruiting is just a whim. We're really diligent in what we do. Like, I can't overstate that. We're really diligent in what we do. And for Connor Withers, I have to give Coach Martelli the credit. Because he's the one that, you know, spotted him. He did the analytical research. He did the talking to different people around him, all the way from his family to his high school coaches to his college coaches at the time. And then I did some background work too. And just the way he played, we knew if we could get his game and his mental on the same page, which we have been good with in the past, that he could be a special player. And that's what you're seeing this year. We've actually had success. Now, you have to know yourself too. If you haven't had success with that, then we probably shouldn't touch that kid. We probably should go a different route. But we have had success with guys that had some, you know, emotional issues on the court, and we were able to kind of reel them in. So that's why we were able to take a calculated chance on Connor Withers. Earl Timberlake, like, people just think we just grab, like, you can't just grab an Earl Timberlake. And people just think we're just going after the best talent. Now, would we have turned down Earl Timberlake? I don't know, but we do a lot of research in people's character. And when I tell you Earl Timberlake is one of the best people, like, I tell people this all the time. If you have any organization in the world, you want an Earl Timberlake in your organization. He's very low maintenance. He does everything you ask him to do. He cares about his teammates probably more than himself. And when you talk to him, it's hard to get that out of you because he's so silent. But once he opens up and starts just talking, just regular, you know, when people care about other stuff other than themselves, it just oozes out, right? So you start to hear just different snippets like, well, we did 6 or 7 different, you know, Zooms with 6 or 7 different players, and they never said that, or they never did. They never asked that question, or they never did that. And Earl Timberlake is just one of those guys. Like, I'm telling you, one of the best people, not a kid now, they're grown, but one of the best people that you could have as a leader, and for young people to follow and for his peers to follow. He's one of the best. And he's why, you know, along with Coach Martelli and some of the staff, like, he's why we're at where we're at. Like, you know, so I would say that, like, we do a lot of analytical work. We do a lot of background work, because if it doesn't, if it doesn't fit, it doesn't fit.
So coming out of the DMV, you wound up at the University of Hartford. I'm kind of bouncing around, but it's just such an interesting career arc. And Hartford had a lot of players from the DMV that had gone through there. And for people that didn't keep up on the area at the time, they might not know, or they weren't, but like for like America East guys, Hartford guys, like there was, Aaron Cook, Charles Ford, let me think. Deion Saunders was like the player of the year in the DMV, was there for a bit. Trevor Good was there before you.
Paris Carter came
with you.
Yeah.
Like there was a lot of guys from that area that wound up at Hartford of all places. And how did that come to pass? And did you have a relationship with any of those guys before going there?
Well, I definitely had a relationship with Paris. We played against each other all the time, and AAU, we were rivals. He played for Cecil Kirk. I played for DC Assault. And then we actually went to prep school together at Notre Dame Prep. I left my senior year halfway through the year and went to Notre Dame Prep while he was already there. But all those guys came because of Chris Pompey. And Chris Pompey ended up going to New Mexico State afterwards. But he did a tremendous job, obviously, bringing in all that talent. So, yeah, I knew Charles Ford because I watched him play. I was much younger than him, but I watched him play in the DMV.
Man, was he an athlete.
Yeah, he was. And Deion Saunders was much older than me, but I watched those guys, coming up. I was much younger. But, yeah, there was a lot of talent due to what Chris Pompey was able to bring in there.
Tell me about the culture in the DMV with basketball. I mean, so, I'm from New Jersey and played a lot of ball in Philly, okay? Not necessarily New York, but more Philly than anything. And, we used to have guys come up from the DMV,
right?
But again, this is back in the day. This is like J.R. Reed and guys like that, used to come up and play in the Sunny Hill League. But I've always noticed, man, I mean, you've got some serious players down there, and like anywhere, a lot of them get lost in the shuffle.
Yes.
And you've seen that, right?
Yes.
So there are probably better players who get lost in the shuffle than the ones who actually make it.
Yes.
You never see those guys.
Absolutely.
Right?
I agree.
Tell me about, what would you tell young players today? Because I'm sure there are some that are teetering on that edge right now. And I think part of it is the disappointment that they get because they see that, well, they're not looking at me like, I'm better than this guy.
For sure.
What advice would you give those type of athletes?
I would say, man, it's what it taught me: perseverance.
Mm-hmm.
You can't manufacture your life. It's going to happen the way God has it. So if you have those principles at a young age of dedication, discipline and just be hardworking, at some point it's going to crack through.
Mm-hmm.
It may not crack through with what your dreams were when you were a kid, but at some point it's going to crack through, and then you keep going, and then there's going to be another crack.
Right.
It may be a different avenue, but whatever your goal is, if that's what you're determined on, like chase it. Like I don't tell any kid to stop. Like
right.
Chase it, but you got to really chase it. Like you can't sit there and talk about chasing it. Like go chase it. So I would tell them to just keep working, and every time you're discouraged, there is another opening. There's going to be another opening, but you got to be urgent but patient. And that's hard for a young person to navigate. They're like, what does that mean? You got to be urgent with your work, but you got to be patient to let God work as well. Because he's going to be working. He's not just sitting there letting you pour all this into it without working. So you'll get something out of it. And sometimes it's not just like, for me, I put all of it into it and I got sick, and it ended up being the training and coaching route. It may not you be the NBA. Whatever God wants your purpose to be is where he's going to navigate you to be. So I would say just keep chipping along and have God in your, I wouldn't even say the back of your mind or the front of your mind, and let him navigate it from there.
So I'm hearing faith and focus.
Yeah.
Right.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah.
What would you say about your career? Because you grew up, you said from an early time, you knew you were good at you were better than most people at basketball. You go to Hartford because Chris Palman, he is instrumental in getting all those guys. You talk to anyone, and he was the lead on all of their guys. And he's a top assistant. The head coach isn't retained. He goes to New Mexico State. You went there with him, and you didn't. I think it's safe to say that your basketball career was not what you envisioned when you were 13, 14, 15. Like
absolutely.
What would you say about what happened with you as a player, and your career sort of coming to an end prematurely?
First, before we get into that, I want to point out Larry Harrison was let go after being the coach of the year.
Yes.
The same year he was coach of the year, he was let go.
Right, he was let go.
I just want to point that out.
Yep.
That's my guy. I still talk to him to this day. He's a great dude. So I don't know how you get coach of the year and then let go, but whatever.
Shout out to coach. Wow, that's right.
Yeah.
Great dude.
Wow.
But going to what you said, man, I would say, repeat that again.
Just what would you say about your college
career?
And it didn't go the way you wanted, and just what are you willing to share about sort of your time as a player coming to an end?
So obviously when my father was there was structure. So I worked out all the time. He put me against older guys. I played. My game grew. I ended up being, very, very good. When he was gone, that structure was gone. So I didn't keep that at 13, 14 years old. I didn't keep that going, and I went alternate routes. So I actually was so angry there were some things that happened at Montrose that, not to go into, but I didn't want to play basketball anymore.
Right.
So, I felt like not David Atkins, but I felt like somewhere in there, people cared about just the basketball portion of me and not me as a kid and my sister. I was so good that they gave me and my sister a scholarship. And there were some things going on there. So I didn't play basketball for a whole year and I gained 100 pounds. I gained 800.
That's impressive.
Yes.
Wow.
I gained 100 pounds. I would miss school and I would just order a pizza and sit there and play the video game. It was ridiculous, man. So I gained 100 pounds, which is very, very hard to do. I got up to 280. When I left there, I went to my neighborhood public school, which was Hayfield at the time. And going back to how my father put things into place and how God put things into place, Trevor Brown, who was the coach at National Christian, him and my father were close at the time that my father ended up passing away. He was like, hey, come over here with me. I ended up falling back in love with the game. Lost the 100 pounds and then ended up being, but when you lose 100 pounds, your feet are the same, so you're not explosive. You're not this, you're not that. So I ended up, I had the same skill. I couldn't shoot it as well as was young because shooting is repetition. And I had the same skill, the vision and skills and all that, which got me over and being smarter, but I didn't have the explosiveness and I didn't have the shot that I did at the time that I was as good as I was. So that's kind of what happened, man. I fell off of a cliff, and fortunately I was so good at the time that I ended up having some skills to be able to still carry me over to making the career that I ended up having out of it. So
at 13, you lose your father.
Yeah.
All right. And now you're associate head coach at a very good university. Is it college now or is it university? It's university, right?
Yeah,
yes.
Bryant University.
Bryant University. University. So my question is, at 13, you had a perception, right?
Yeah.
And you were disappointed. But as a coach now, you think back on how you were disappointed because you saw, from what I remember you saying, you saw that, or you felt as though that people were more concerned about you because of your skills, right? They were more interested in you because of your skills than they were in you as a young man.
Yeah.
So now as a coach, how do you navigate that when you see that and you go out recruiting?
Yeah.
And, we had mentioned the word handlers earlier, okay?
Yeah.
There's a darker side to basketball, but these
man.
kids don't understand.
Right.
So how do you navigate that when you know there's something in the kid, but the handler themselves messes it up?
Yeah.
Because, especially now, because you have to win games. So you're looking for the best people.
Yes.
I've heard you're looking for the best people that have talent. You can do the rest with your coaching.
You can figure it out. Yeah.
You can figure it out. So that's your mindset. but you've got the other guys that come to you and say, well, you're not going to get this kid, or, or I'm going to remember this down the road.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And that actually puts your ability to grow your programs in jeopardy. How do you, what are some of the tools you use to manage that thought process and those problems?
You know what? You deal with it all the time. I'm being honest. Like, you deal with it all the time. And the best way, and I don't even know if it's the best way to deal with it, but it's the way I deal with it. I stay genuine. So I go after that kid. If that kid fits our bill and we get that kid, I'm responsible for him then. I can't help what the handler wants. I can't help what the handler is saying, but I'm responsible to stay true to that kid and stay true to myself. And honestly, if I follow the way God wants you to treat people, it has worked for me. It just has. And people think like I'm this big time recruiter, but every kid that I have, I pour my all into on and off the court. So when they leave, they're telling that next kid the same thing, because there's very few people that do that. So when the kid is in the transfer portal, even more than the high school, because when you're in high school, you're caught up in just the glitz and the glamour.
Right.
Something's went wrong when you're in the transfer portal. So you're looking for real now. You're not looking for the glitz and the glamour. You're looking for real. So that's why I've had success in the portal, because every kid that I've had, whether they don't like what's going on at the time, they always know, one, I care, and they always find out at the end of the road that I was always in his corner or always doing the best for him. So that's the way. And I guess since I've had success that way, I'm not going to go back to maybe the Dylan and whatever, whatever you want to call it. It makes sense
because you're going after older kids, right?
Right.
So now those kids who have transferred now in the portal, they've got a different perception of how things really are, right? They've got a newer perception, right? They're disappointed, and now they're looking for real. Yeah. So that gives you a chance as a coach to be yourself. Yeah. Right? Yeah. And I mean, you get a better version of a person. Yeah. Okay. All right.
I'm curious how you guys, so Bryant you're in a small conference, we'll say mid-major, low major, whatever. The good schools in the small conference are like, we're mid-major. If you look at where the America East stands in the conference rankings, is it really mid-major? I'm not going to get into it. But you guys have some sort of an NIL program at Bryant. Not every school does, but as a small school, like, you're going to have limited resources. Even the small schools that have some sort of NIL collaborative, it's going to be limited. It's not like the blue blood programs that are like, we can give everybody $300,000 that comes here or more. And when we talked to Carm Marchiarello, who the former Siena coach, and he was talking about, navigating that was very difficult as far as you only have X amount of money. Do you give everybody the same amount? Do you go, well, there's this kid that could really be a difference maker, but if we give him most of our NIL budget, then we're going to have 12 disgruntled players that are like, well, I'm not getting that. I'm important to the team. How do you guys navigate that as a small school that has an NIL, but it's limited with
very limited. Yeah. Like we just try to do the best we can. We try to take care of everybody the best we can. And obviously, like the Earl Timberlakes, really for us, I keep saying it sounds cliche, it's relationships. Our guys are there because relationships. Because I promise you, when Earl Timberlake went in the portal last year, I promise you we could not match anything that was thrown out there. I promise you, firsthand, I know we could not match that. We could not match what Rafael Pinzon was hearing through the phones. We could not match that. So a lot of it is just being relationships and trying to take care of those kids. And when you're trying to take care of those kids, they see that. Even when you're not able to do it to the level of some of these, like we just got two transfers from Miami last year. Like I promise you, we don't have the resources as Miami. And they knew that before they stepped on the floor. Like it's not like we create a beach and everything on their visit. You know what I mean? We can't just create that. But they knew who we were as people, and they gravitated to that this time around more than anything. So we've had success because of the way we treat people, honestly.
how hard was it for you to make peace with no longer being a basketball player and it ending prematurely and transitioning into the next phase of your life?
It's very hard. And we talk to our kids about this all the time. Like we tell them, and you guys know, college is the best part of your life. Like once college is over, responsibilities is yours, right? And they don't understand that until it hits. So for me, not playing basketball, but because I had a father that taught me perseverance and how to get through stuff and all that, like I pivoted quick. And I wouldn't even say that. I would say me being sick actually helped the process, because once I was sick, I had to focus on getting better from being sick. So that took all of my energy. And then, I went through some struggles. I was actually homeless a little bit, and I had to, I wasn't even in basketball. People don't even know my story. Like once I got sick at New Mexico, my degree wasn't finished. So I had to find a way to pay for my degree, and still get it. So I ended up, being homeless for a little bit. I was working 2 jobs. I was a telemarketer. I was also a janitor at a medical center. And I did that for about 1.5 years. And then, a little angel came down, Curtis Malone asked me to do some workout stuff. But so that kind of flowed, like the sickness kind of helped me because I was so in tune with that. And then right when that was over, and I wouldn't even say over, but right at the tail end of that, somebody came down and asked me to train. So I ended up going into basketball quick. So I went right from player, being sick for 1 year, taking care of myself, to trainer. And then I was just in it. Once you're in it, you're just in it. Yeah. So, but I've gotten friends who fall off a cliff. Like when that game is over, that game is over. Once you stop, it is over. So that's why, man, I think you got to do a really good job of raising these young men, because there's only 350 jobs in that NBA, man. And then people think overseas is guaranteed, and no, it's not. And once you get over there, you realize, oh, this is not what it's cracked up to be. I got a kid that's in Europe right now, and he was telling me, man, tell those guys, like, in college, you got the manager to rebound and this, that, and the third. You got to go get your work by yourself over there in Europe. Like, you're not always going to have the coach and the manager and this, that, and the third, unless you're going to one of those top, you know what I mean?
Yeah. There are different levels.
As you're navigating your career, you got to have some self-discipline yourself to go. And people don't understand that. So, yeah, man, it wasn't as bad for me because of my upbringing and then what I went through, and I got right into basketball, but I've seen it tear people apart, man.
Your relationship with your father had so much to do with the strong foundation that you have as a man.
Absolutely.
I'm in total agreement with you when you talk about the beginning, the foundations. Because Sam and I talked about it for the last couple of weeks, and I keep saying, because I'm trying to figure this out. Now the kids are having a lot of mental health problems, and basketball is going to bring some of that out. It's stress, right? You're stressed out as a young athlete. And, I'm listening to your story. You're homeless for a little bit, you're sick, and there's definitely some psychological issues going on there, right? How do I get through this?
How do I get out of this?
But what held you together was a philosophy that was built, that was instilled in you with your father, from your father. Yeah. You know what? I will fight through this. I like to tell the kids, they say, well, I want that smoke. They want that smoke. Well, with smoke comes fire, right? If you ain't willing to walk through that fire, don't come out here. You know what I'm saying? So it ain't got nothing to do with smoke, right? That's just a warning sign, because now it gets serious. And when you go to college, it's as serious as it gets, right?
And if you don't have that foundation, there's so many kids that are so talented in college that go into college that ended up just being mediocre because they don't have that foundation to do it by themselves. Like I tell guys all the time, like, and maybe from this small town area, like everybody wants to be a lion until they're around a bunch of lions.
Right, until they're around a bunch of lions. That's right.
Exactly. You're the big fish, and you go in there. Now it's a little different when there's a bunch of fish. Yeah, exactly.
Exactly.
So I'm curious. I know, Bobby, we're getting up against it for you time wise and everything, but you still got to win 3 games. 3 games.
Yeah, 3 games in the tournament.
To get to the NCAA's. There's no at-larges in the America East. What do you guys have to do to get there?
Man, this is college basketball, right? This is exciting times. Like, this is what you want to do.
Yeah.
This is where you want to be. And Coach talks about it all the time. Like, there's teams out there that are kind of folding it up and looking into recruiting and all this. This is where, when you want to be a Division I athlete, this is where you want to be. So we're in the driver's seat right now, like you said, but, Vermont's on our tail, Maine's on our tail. There's some very good programs, coaches that are going to do everything in their power to knock us off. But it's fun, man. And Coach always talks about it. You know what we do? We focus on number 11. We focus on number 12. Whatever number is in front of us, like, we got to win that game. Like, we can't go in thinking we need to win 3 games. We got to win that game, because if we don't win that game, then also we got to put all of our energy and our scouting and everything into that game. And that's how we've been all year. Yeah. We haven't skipped any steps. So yeah, it's exciting to come down this home stretch, and there's maybe 7 teams, 8 teams that would love to be in our position right now. They'll trade with us in a heartbeat. Right. So we like the challenge, man, and it's what you want to do. It's where you want to be. So we went out, we win it. It's in our hands. So we'll see. It's gonna be fun.
That's a good position to be in.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. Yeah.
Well, Bobby, Chris, thank you so much for coming in today, man. This was an awesome conversation. We might have to. We go on the road sometimes for this. We might have to come down to Bryant and do a part 2, man.
Absolutely.
Yeah, let me know.
Yeah,
man.
that'd be fun.
Get some of the other coaches out there.
That'd be great.
Yep.
That'd be great.
That'd be real
perfect,
cool.
man.
You got Phil Martelli's son is the coach,
yeah,
right?
he's the head coach. That's a wild.
Man,
I bet that's an interesting story too. When you grow up the son of an all-time great there.
Oh man, his dad.
They're different but the same.
Yeah.
He's very good.
Yeah, they really.
You guys got pretty young staff, right?
Yeah, Brendan Phillips, and then
Ryan Daly, right?
Ryan Daly, who played at St. Joe's.
Yes,
bucket getter.
Yes. Buckets.
He reminds us all the time.
yeah, I'm sure.
Nick Schmidt, whose father is the coach at St. Bonaventure right now.
Oh, Mark's. He's Mark's. Oh,
Mark's
wow.
son.
Okay.
And then Brendan Phelps is Coach Martelli's brother-in-law. He grew up in Connecticut and is pretty familiar with the Connecticut scene and all that.
All right, a Philly connection over there a little bit there. You got Ryan Daly.
I remember when Daly's dad was
Philly connection.
I remember when Daly's dad was an assistant at BU.
Yes,
so,
yes. And then he was an assistant at BU. They made it to the championship at one point too.
Yeah. Well, thank you, Chris, for coming in. It's an amazing
guys
story,
for
man. It was a great
having me.
conversation. Yeah, thank you.
Appreciate it.